Good morning and welcome to the Morning Mint. We're very happy that you've joined us today. We've got Julianne Bond and Sorel Roget joining us today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is National Work From Home Day. And so we wanted to bring our viewers some information about work from home and what it's done for the real estate market countrywide and what we're seeing in New York City. So I thought it'd be a little interesting to share some of the background to working from home. Essentially, everybody used to work from home, and it was really in the 1500s with the Renaissance when offices started to open up and be a thing, and really in the Industrial Revolution when people really started to en masse work out of offices or work not at home. And before COVID, interestingly enough, only about 20% of people who could potentially work remotely and get their jobs done remotely ever worked remotely. But during COVID, particularly during the peak of COVID, about 70% of those who could work remotely and get their jobs done remotely were doing so. And Pew Research conducted a survey that found that more than half, about 54% of people who worked remotely during COVID wanted to remain remote indefinitely. I think we've been spoiled by being at home. And so, so that is a big part of the reason for the incredible real estate boom that we're seeing around the country. People want more space. They see that their lives have shifted because of remote work. And in fact, just yesterday morning, The Real Deal published an article that talked about how there was this insane frenzy for a home in New Jersey that was just an hour's drive from New York City New Jersey Transit train ride, and that it was listed on a Friday for $699,000. There were 90 showings. By Sunday, there were 40 offers, and the winning bid came in $100,000 over ask. So, okay, yes, there's a suburban frenzy. But what about Manhattan? Is this contributing to this insane Manhattan, Brooklyn real estate market? And is the work from home frenzy what's happening? Is that what we're seeing, Julianne? Is that why the market is insane in Manhattan in your case?
I mean, I think the work from home is a factor for sure. We know that people want more space. They have an opportunity also to enter the market, perhaps in part because of the compelling interest rates. It allows them to not only buy, but to really stretch. So that, at least I'm seeing that in Manhattan. I'm seeing that really at all price points, people are stepping up, buying, and they're stretching as much as they possibly can. I see that both when I'm working and representing sellers. I see it when I'm representing the buyers. So I don't know. What do you, Sorel, is that?
Yeah, I agree. I think, people in general just want more space, whether it's because they're ready to kill the significant other that they've been cooped up with for the past year, or because they adopted a pet. That happened a ton over COVID. Or yes, I think working from home is a huge component, a huge factor in that. And we're seeing even a lot of companies that are starting to decide to make certain roles permanently work from home. So people are now seeing that this is not something that was just a blip. It wasn't just March, April of last year. It's stuck around and it's going to continue to do so. And it's driving people to, like Julianne said, just really in general, just want more space. I think there was such a huge focus on home in the last year. We're all home a lot more. We value it more. It's such a much more impactful part of our lives than it was previously when we were out of home significantly more, especially in a city like New York. In New York, people didn't live in New York City to be at home, right? They lived in New York City to experience the city. But as the last year has changed the way that everybody is functioning, home has become a much more significant piece of people's lives. And so that's just driven a huge demand for properties in general. And now we're starting to see that shift is, yes, in the beginning, it was definitely like all 2 bedrooms, and we were seeing a shift away from studios and 1 bedrooms, but now the market has come back full force across the board. And studios are up in terms of sales, 1 bedrooms are up in terms of sales. Really, the market as a whole is just seeing a huge amount of demand. And also less supply. So, we're seeing in the Manhattan market, for instance, I think Julianne has some stats on what supply has changed. But, supply versus demand in Brooklyn, we saw an 18% increase in supply year over year, but a 378% increase in pending sales year over year. So this shows why it shifted from being a buyer's market to being a seller's market, because that's not a small amount of increase in demand.
Interesting. Wow, that really is an incredible increase in demand compared to supply. And Julianne, what are we seeing in Manhattan?
I mean, nothing. It's quite similar. I mean, if you look at the supply from last year in Manhattan, we are up about 28%. But if you look at the signed contract activity from last year, that is actually much higher. That's 240% more contracts were signed, are being signed now, right, versus last year. So I actually just wanted to add on to something that Sorel brought up, and kind of to your point, Rosana, about is Manhattan and let's call it New York City, is it experiencing the same, let's say, enthusiasm, that buyer enthusiasm that other parts of the country are? And I think now that New York has reopened, there's so many reasons that people want to be here, and some of it has to do with work, and some of it has to do with just the pleasures of New York City. So we are seeing a big driver, I think, because in large part because the city is reopening, and once New York is really back to being New York, there are a lot of people who want to be here for lots of reasons.
I have to totally agree with that. In the last week, I had 3 buyers come in from out of state that are moving here in the next few months.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest, just 3 brand new just in 1 week, from Atlanta and California. So you are starting to see now the shift of more people coming in. I mean, in the beginning of COVID, a lot of people left New York. That was not something that was unknown. And so especially the market that was buying the studios and 1 bedrooms in particular was really low. A lot of people were leaving Manhattan for the suburbs or also Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn didn't ever really see a down market because you were seeing people even shift from Manhattan to Brooklyn. But, now we're seeing so much more activity of people coming back to New York. New York is a city that, seeing these articles about like New York is dead, I always had to laugh, because New York will never be dead. It's always going to be a city where people want to be. And it's one of the cities that always recovers the fastest in any market. I mean, following the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, it bounced back faster than probably any market in the United States, because people want to be here, but also the financial controls that are in place with co-ops and things like that. It's not an easy market to buy in, but that also protects it in a way.
Okay, such a good point. And what are your buyers seeing? Because I'm hearing about bidding wars left and right, not only for sales, but for rentals, which I have never seen that before. I don't know about you both, but I have never seen people bidding $4,000 on a $3,500 a month rental in the city. Like, to me, that's so bananas, but it just speaks to how badly people want back in, which is what we've been saying all along. Like, don't worry, like, it's just going to be a few months until, we're seeing more activity. And so, yeah, what are your buyers seeing, Sorel, starting with you, buyers and sellers? What are you seeing in terms of, what they're wanting, what they're getting?
Yeah, I think what we're noticing is that in the past, you could bid on a property and be the only offer. And now that just is rarely the case. I think with so much demand and, not a ton of new supply, I think month over month, there was actually a decrease in supply from April to May, or less new supply than the previous month. So we're seeing that kind of go down a little bit. But, with all of my with all of my buyers, we've either had a multiple offer situation or a bidding war, highest and best situation. So not every single one has turned into like quote unquote a bidding war, but every single one has had more than one offer on the property. We had a listing in Boerum Hill for a 2-bedroom that went into contract. You know, we had showings for a week, had multiple offers, and we were able to get it in less than 2 weeks into contract significantly over ask.
Wow.
So that's what we're seeing kind of consistently, is that if properties are priced right, I mean, that's the real determinant in this, is if you've priced a property well, then in this market, it should be moving quickly and for a good price, or, you know, in most cases, it's going over ask. But that's all contingent on how it's presented, how it's priced, and then how you're showing it. I mean, if you have a property that shows well, that's been staged or, you know, freshly painted, that's all going to come into play. Not just any property is flying off the market. You can't throw something up with cell phone photos and expect it to go in a day. It's not crazy like that. But, you know, so it's still really important that you have a conversation with your broker and understand what this market means and how to navigate it. I mean, we are the ones who are seeing it on a day-to-day basis and can then understand how best to approach each situation, which is all very unique.
Okay. Jellybean wants to confirm.
Jellybean has something to say.
Okay, interesting, Sorel. And Julianne, how about you? What are you seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, what I am seeing is at all price points, and I represent buyers and sellers pretty equally. I am seeing really the same thing, that there are a lot of eyes on these properties, and they very often, there will be multiple offers. If the property is properly priced, meaning compellingly priced, doesn't have to be a fire sale. It just buyers have to see value in this market. They have to ideally look at the property as the best thing they are seeing out there of its class.
Right.
I mean, I would just say probably one of the strangest things that has happened beyond the multiple offers and things going into contract in the first couple of weeks, which they are, at least on my seller's side, and with my buyers, really trying to, you know, make sure that they win this property. One of the strangest things that I've seen is I represented a seller. I mean, we're you know, it's a very recent deal. We had a multiple offer situation. Somebody got it. Somebody else was in backup. The contract got signed by the first buyer, the buyer that won the bidding war. 2 weeks later, the backup people came in with this much, much increased offer after we were already in contract. I mean, it's kind of like I'm not sure. Some of this is very rational, I mean, I have to say. You know, it's the one thing, because of the way we do business here, we don't have signed contracts the second that we have accepted offers. So I always, you know, the example I gave you didn't really matter. We were already in contract, but, you know, I don't know about you, Sorel, that the caution always, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, is, hey, beware the frothy bid, you know, the buyer who's all worked up and has to have it, throwing themselves at it. You know, it takes a week or two for us to get a signed contract. We don't want people waking up in the morning and realizing that they don't want to pay that much. So it's a bit of a segue, but I do think that one of the things that our challenge in New York City is the way that we transact. We are not like other parts of the country. When you have an accepted offer, it is essentially just a verbal agreement. It's a handshake.
Yeah.
So we have we are walking a tightrope for those 2 weeks. We're trying to keep things going. We're making sure we're continuing to show. We're also making sure that the offers that we're accepting or making are ones that are solid. So.
Well, and I think to that point, working with buyers, because you do have a week to kind of get cold feet, get scared about little things. I mean, I think it's really important before you submit a crazy bid. Like I always have the conversation with my buyers of like, this is where the market is. This is what comps say. The market is obviously creating a push above that, but it doesn't really matter what the market says. It matters what it's worth to you. And that might be way above the market. I had a client who bid on a property and they were 20% above ask, and they were getting a co-op, and I said, hey, look, you guys are in condo prices now. Are you sure that this is what you want? But it was the home that they loved. They've been there for a year now and they could not be happier. For other buyers, I don't care that the market says it's worth $850. I'm not paying over $800 because that's what it's worth to me. And so, it's really finding that balance of making sure that if you hear it went for $5,000 more than what you offered, would you be disappointed? Would you wish that you would have put a bid in for $5,000 more? Or, if you buy this property, are you going to be like, oh my gosh, I overpaid. I shouldn't have paid this much. So it's finding that balance between buyer's remorse and regret that you didn't go a little bit further or push a little bit higher. And it's a very difficult thing because, buyers want us to give them a straight answer, but it's so much more involved than that. And it's really subjective. And so it's really just having those conversations, substantially discussing it at length with your buyers and making sure that they understand and are really positive about what they're doing so that they don't get into a situation that they later regret.
Such a good point. It is such an emotional roller coaster in many ways. And we say often here on the Morning Mint that New York City real estate market is not for the faint of heart. No. And, whether you're looking for a home office or a pied-à-terre, or maybe you're coming back to the city part-time, or you just want a place to crash when you're here, obviously it's something that you need to be very prepared for and try to keep your emotions out of it, because it will be a roller coaster one way or another, particularly in the market that we're currently seeing. And so, yes, Julianne and Sorel, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your wisdom and insight about what's happening in the market. And I hope you both enjoy International Work From Home Day. And I want you to both continue being our guests on the Morning Mint. Thank you so much again for your time today.
Good. Thanks.
Yes, for any of our viewers who are in the market, whether to buy or to sell, please reach out to Julianne and Sorel. They can guide you with their expert advice and opinion. And it's a craft. It really is an art that Julianne and Sorel do every single day, and they're here to help you. So again, thank you, everyone, and enjoy your day.
Thank you, Rosana.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye.